Hello, friends. It's Aunt Nikki from Your Story Hour. How are you all doing? Are you looking forward to the next chapter in Loony Coon? Well, I know I am. Loony Coon by Sam Campbell, Chapter 8, Missing in Action. Ginny pressed me for some hopeful thought about our family of raccoons. I tried my best to talk cheerfully, but our recent experience with the owl had a dark influence on my thinking. There comes a time when the raccoon mother takes her young out on hunting expeditions, I ventured. Perhaps that's what has happened. She's led them about the forest and along the lake shore, teaching them how to make a living. It's possible that she's been gone many hours on such a trip. But isn't it probable that she'd come back home during the daytime? Ginny queried. I had to admit that was likely. During daylight, then, we went to Cooney Castle to see if it was occupied. It was not, and there was no recent evidence of raccoons coming and going. Surely the owl couldn't have destroyed them all. Ginny was struggling against our fears. Ginny Bubo couldn't possibly eat so much. No, but unfortunately the great horned owl is one of the few creatures that will kill beyond its needs, I replied, not liking the dodged facts. Anyway, let's not give up hope just because of that one possibility. Andrea may have outwitted Ginny Bubo entirely. Another day passed, and still no trace of the raccoons. They were in our thoughts constantly. We had not realized how deeply this little family had become embedded in our hearts. Particularly Loony Coon haunted us with recollections of his funny ways. The Eck family called one afternoon. "Something happened that I must share with you," Dorothy said. "It's the kind of thing that reveals how sweet and rich life really is," said the quiet-spoken Dick. Placing his arms around his daughter, he added, "and how loving our Sonia is." Sonia, embarrassed, asked permission to feed the birds. While she went outside the cabin and called Pestersome Pete and the other birds, her parents told their story. "Dorothy was much upset after our day at Warden Ollie's place," Dick said. "Yes, silly old me," put in Dorothy. "I would have sold myself for a nickel and given back 10 cents change." "Indeed, you were not silly, and if you are ever up for sale, I'll buy you," Dick defended her. "We all know your problem about animals isn't make-believe. She isn't acting a part," he said to Ginny and me. "She really suffers at times. We had quite a bad time over that day." "Well, I still think I was silly." "Bless you, Dorothy," said Ginny, taking her hand. "You won't help matters by condemning yourself." She has plenty of courage," Dick said emphatically. "Well, anyway, we want you to hear the rest of the story." Sonia noticed that her mother was not quite herself, and "You never saw such a salacious person in your life," Dorothy broke in. "She just waited on me all the next day. I enjoyed it so much I let her drag it out as long as she would." Both laughed. Then in bits of conversation that came partly from each other, they told their story. Sonia had become very quiet during that evening. "She went to her room and was gone so long I went to see if anything was wrong," Dick said. "I found her praying, and I left without her knowing I'd been there." Dorothy took up the thread of the story. "After a little while she came to me and asked if she might talk to me. She had been crying." "Dick, you tell it." Dorothy could not trust her voice. "Yes, I will, dear," he said. Sonia had a hard time to get started, but at last she steadied herself and said, "Mother, I've decided to give up animals." We were both so surprised we couldn't think of a thing to say. "Yes, Mother, I mean it," she went on. "I've been thinking and praying all day long for courage to tell you." "Then I broke loose," Dorothy said. "I told her she'd do nothing of the sort. I said I knew animals meant more to her than anything in the world." "You should have heard the child," Dick said, beaming with parental pride. "You'd have thought she was grown up. She said, 'Yes, Mother, that's where I've been wrong. I let them mean more to me than even you. Really, I didn't know you were so afraid of animals until we came here. I wouldn't make you unhappy for anything in the world, and so, well, you won't have to put up with any more turtles and snakes and things." She couldn't say any more, Dorothy broke in. She just hugged me and buried her head in my shoulder. "Bless her," Dick smiled. "Probably no one knows what a sacrifice she was making," I said, thinking it would mean what it would mean to me to give up my animal friends. "Well, she is going to have animals," Dorothy interrupted. "I told her so. I'll gather in turtles and snakes with my bare hands. I'll even pick up worms." A shiver went over Dorothy that made her clench her fists and close her eyes. "Mother!" cried Sonia, rushing in the door. "Pestersome Pete was sitting on my head." "Was he, dear?" Dorothy hugged her adoptive daughter. "Yes, and he lights on my nose and takes crumbs from my lips." Dorothy looked at us with an expression of grim determination. "By the way, how is the family of raccoons getting along?" We had hoped they might not ask about Andrea and her family, but now we were forced to explain our fears. "Oh, no," said Sonia, looking much distressed. "You mean that old owl may have destroyed all of them?" Dorothy asked. "Possibly, or if he got the best of Andrea, he may have picked off the little coons one at a time," I said. "I can't bear to think of Loony Coon being carried off in the talons of that owl." Dorothy was leaning forward, her eyes wide with excitement. "Well, it could be, though we hope not." "Why, we can't stand for it," cried Dorothy, rising. "Let's search the woods and see if we can find those coons. Let's—" Dorothy stopped abruptly, a look of surprise on her face. "Look at me," she cried. "Look at me. I'm all concerned about an animal. I never cared a hoot before whether animals came or went. Now I'm all bothered and anxious. I'm gaining. Hooray!" And we all echoed her hooray. And Sonia's voice was the loudest. Come back tomorrow for Chapter 9. See you later.